Now, as the Mandate for Palestine was coming to an end in 1948, towards the end of that period, the United Nations wrestled with the question of what to do with these territories, realising that there was significant Arab opposition to the creation of a Jewish state in the area of Western Palestine, west of the Jordan River. And in November 1947, the United Nations adopted a resolution, the General Assembly adopted a resolution recommending the creation of two states, a Jewish state and an Arab state in the area of Mandate Palestine. Now, it's very important to realise that this was a resolution to propose a particular solution. It was not accepted, it was not definitive, it was not binding, and it never came into force. So the State of Israel, which was created less than a year later in May 1948, does not depend either for its legitimacy or for its borders upon that resolution, the partition resolution of November 1947. We then had the creation of the State of Israel, May 48, immediately the invasion by 5 states of this new nation attacked, and the war, what is now known as the War of Independence, the creation of the refugee problem, and that conflict came to a termination of hostilities with the armistice agreements of 1949. Now the lines of those armistice lines, 1949, as contained in armistice agreements between Israel and its enemies at that time, put an end to the conflict, but they did not establish borders. Those lines are now known as the Green Line and are now referred to as the 1967 borders. They are not borders at all. They were never intended to be borders. And in fact, those armistice agreements quite clearly say they do not affect the underlying title or rights or interests in the territories which were concerned. And in fact, the mandate conditions still continued to apply. The rights and interests and title transferred or created under the mandate in right of the Jewish people continued and were protected and preserved by Article 80 of the UN Charter when the UN finally replaced the League of Nations in 1945. So we have this complex situation whereby in 1949 Egypt occupied the Gaza Strip and Jordan took full control over what has now come to be known as the West Bank. And Jordan did so illegally. In fact, it illegally annexed that area. Those territories did not belong to Jordan at that time. In 1967, the Six-Day War, Israel a preemptive strike into Egypt when it knew it was about to be attacked or thought it was about to be attacked by several nations, resulting in the Six-Day War. And in those 6 days, Israel took full control of the West Bank, Golan Heights, Gaza Strip, and even all of the Sinai. That resulted in UN resolution, Security Council Resolution 242, which required the parties to negotiate a settlement of that conflict. Now, those territories which Israel took control of are now known as the occupied territories. And it is said that Israel is illegally occupying those territories. We need to think for a moment about this question of occupation. In a nutshell, the international humanitarian law, the Fourth Geneva Convention concerns the law of occupation. When one state takes control of territory in a conflict situation which belongs to another state, and a conflict arises, that state taking control of the territory is considered to be occupying that territory and is required to administer it in such a way that it protects the local population. It's basically a law intended to protect the local population. Occupation as such is not illegal. So a statement that Israel is illegally occupying the West Bank is in itself inaccurate, because occupation is not illegal. What is illegal is certain conduct by an occupier, including, in this case, most particularly transferring a population of the occupier into the occupied territory. So what is considered to be problematic is the fact that Israel facilitated the movement of its population into the other areas of Jerusalem, what is now known as East Jerusalem, and the West Bank area. But arguably, Israel is not even occupying that territory because it did not belong to Jordan or Egypt at the time Israel took control of it. So there is a strong argument that Israel is not legally subject to the Fourth Geneva Convention obligations of occupation. But even if it is, the question is Israel doing anything to contravene the Fourth Geneva Convention? And then we come to the issue of settlements. Now, the statement is made that the settlements, Israel's settlements in the occupied territories, are illegal. In fact, all the settlements in East Jerusalem, it is said, and all the settlements in the West Bank since 1967 are said to be illegal by a large part of the international community. What the Fourth Geneva Convention simply says is that the occupying power shall not transfer its population into the occupied territory. Now, many settlements, both in East Jerusalem and in other parts of the West Bank, have not come into existence as a result of Israel, the state of Israel, the government of Israel, moving its people into those areas. There are many, many different kinds of settlements. The people who live in East Jerusalem, the Jewish people who live in East Jerusalem and the West Bank, they're living there for many different reasons. Some of them are living there for religious reasons, some are living there for economic reasons. Many of them, at least some of them, returned to houses and territories which their forefathers owned before they were evicted by Jordan in 1949. Others of them bought properties, either from Arabs or from others. And in many different ways, the settlements came into existence. The very fact, or the only fact of building, does not in itself infringe the Fourth Geneva Convention. What is infringing potentially the Fourth Geneva Convention is the movement of population. And so the blanket statement that all settlements are illegal is too broad, it's too simplistic. If any of the settlements are illegal, it is only specific settlements because they are resulting from Israel specifically transferring population into those areas. So the question of occupation is a complex one, but it doesn't do to simply say that the settlements are illegal. Now, that says nothing about ownership of the territories. The fact that some settlements may or may not be illegal does not in any way confer any rights or title or sovereignty or interests on the Palestinian people as a whole. Particular Arab Palestinians may have rights, even rights that have been transgressed. They have normally recourse to courts to pursue their rights. But that says nothing about the rights of the Palestinian people as a whole. So the question of occupation, in a sense, is not determinative of whether or not the Palestinian people should have a state of their own.